Continuing now with our summer series, Thought Leaders, we're joined now in studio by Noel Curran, the Director General of RTE. Noel, you're very welcome to LMFM.
Delighted to be here, thank you.
Noel, you were appointed DG of RTE 2 years ago, and it was reported you came from Carrickmacross, whereas some others are saying you're a Louth man. Which is it? We need to get these things right.
It's a bit of both, actually. When I was appointed, I remember the Dundalk Democrat ran a headline saying Louth man becomes Director General, and the Northern Standard had a headline saying Monaghan man becomes Director General, and they were both right. I grew up in Reestown, which is a lovely parish just outside RD, but our hometown was Carrickmacross in Monaghan, and I went to school in Carrickmacross, and my home is in Carrickmacross, and hopefully my kids will go to school in Carrickmacross, so I'm a bit of both, really.
And you've settled there now, you've gone home as such to settle at that point.
Yeah, I did. Always wanted to go home, actually. I'm very fond of the Northeast, and as I say, I've 2 kids, and hopefully we'll see them go to school up here as well.
Very good. Now, growing up so close to the border, obviously the other border as it was then, at a time in the 70s when it was very, very intense in news terms, in political terms, in the Troubles, would that have been the reason, do you think, that you developed an interest in the media as a career?
I think that would have had an impact on us, on me, and my younger brother Richard is a journalist as well. When you live that close to the border, and when that kind of upheaval is going on, then it's hard to ignore it, and we would have been very interested in terms of the political developments in the north, and would have had a keen interest in it and would have followed it, and you know, even later on when I became editor of Current Affairs, whenever you ran a story on the north, the ratings tended to fall, but I would have insisted that we still cover it regularly regardless. And it wasn't that I would have had any political involvement, so I just would have had an interest. So I think that living close to the border, and what was going on then certainly shaped an interest for me in current affairs.
And what was then your path into the media?
I went to school in Carrickmacross, and then I went to university in NIHE, where I did communication studies. In school I would have always been interested in writing, in English and in history particularly. And in communication studies I specialised in television production and photography, and I did my thesis on public service broadcasting actually. Then I went off and did a master's in European studies in Trinity, which I left because I got offered a job in journalism, and I was pretty broke at the time, so I didn't say no to it. And that led me from there. RTE asked me to join as a reporter. I then became a producer, did entertainment shows, Late Late Show, Kenny Live, Eurovision, and then went into editor of Current Affairs. From there I went to managing director of television, and from there into director general.
I know that sounds like a very linear progress, but in actual fact you left RTE twice during that period as well. Why was that, and how did that come about?
I was... I've always had, I started in journalism working in the private sector. I've always had an interest in business, particularly after my time in business journalism. Grew to admire business people, particularly entrepreneurs, a lot. And I always had that interest. And I think people who would have known me probably wouldn't have expected me to stay that long in RTE. They probably would have expected to see me as someone who would move around doing different things. I stayed in RTE because I believe in public service broadcasting, and I absolutely believe in what RTE does, but I also had interest in doing other things, and an interest I left RTE to work. I became a director of an independent television production company, which was a fantastic experience. So that mix of private sector, public sector has always appealed to me.
Do you think that stands to you now in a role where you have had to make very serious cutbacks, you've had to become perhaps more commercially driven? Do you think that knowledge of the coalface, if you like, of the private sector helps you?
I think in general terms it does help you. I think knowledge of the public sector helps as well in an organisation like as complex as RTE, but certainly that knowledge of the private sector helps. Of course it does. I think whatever broad range of experiences you can get in business between public and private sector has to help you, and has to help strengthen whatever decisions you have to make.
And in terms of where you're now going to take RT forward, and as I said, you've had a very difficult year. It's been a very troublesome year, and I know that's been very well documented. We don't need to go into it here. But do you think, in terms of the firefighting you've been doing, has that impacted in some way on your vision for the organisation and giving you the time and the space to actually work out what you want that vision to be and where you want to take the organisation?
Yeah, I have a very clear idea as to where I want the organisation to go. I've been in the job now 16 months, and about 6 or 7 months of that has been dealing with the editorial controversies around Primetime Investigates, Frontline particularly. So I think that they did distract the organisation, and I think we will be a stronger organisation as a result of them. I think we will learn lessons and move on. But certainly they consumed the organisation. I would have had to have gotten directly involved in them in terms of the managing of them. And generally a Director General wouldn't get that involved. But given the size of the seismic effect they were having, I had to get very involved over the last 6 or 7 months, and rightly so. And I think that would have deflected some attention, but we didn't stand still. We've restructured the organisation, we've enhanced our digital presence. We're in a cost-cutting mode at the moment, like a lot of organisations, like a lot of media organisations particularly. Hopefully we will get through that cost-cutting phase over the next 2 to 3 months, and we'll be on a much firmer financial footing in terms of the next phase of what we need to do.
What is morale like in RT at the moment, following all these cutbacks and obviously good people taking those retirement packages and going?
Well, people talk about morale in RT being on the floor. I like to, a couple of times a week, I like to pick a part of the organisation and just walk around and just talk to people. And initially when people see you do it, I think they're kind of going, what's all that about? But once you do it regularly, people open up to you and begin to talk to you more. And my own feeling of it is that morale is low in some areas of the organisation, understandably, because of the controversies around Primetime Investigates particularly. But RT is a big organisation, and RT Radio had very strong JNLR figures yesterday. 2FM had strong JNLR figures. They're all on a high today. Television is so big and so broad. They had 2 broadcasts on RTE this week, battle stations, 2 documentaries on RTE, which were really well received, and so they're all excited. So morale, it's such a big organisation. There isn't one mood. I suppose for me, what we need to do now is we need to look at the areas which have been affected where morale is low. We need to examine why that is, and we need to institute changes, because you need it in a creative organisation. You need people who want to come into work in the morning.
One of the central aspects of public service broadcasting, which I know is a big interest of yours, is the trust between the public and the service being provided. What do you think that situation is now regarding the trust element, and where is that going now, and what would you like to see to repair that as such or take it forward?
Yeah, I think you read and you hear about how the public have lost trust in RTE as a result of Primetime Investigates. We do regular audience research every 6 weeks, and in terms of the audience view of RTE, how they feel about RTE, and trust in RTE is not gone. In an awful lot of our output, and trust in RTE is exactly what it was 12 months ago. And I think the public are more discerning than people realise, and I think just because there was a controversial programme in one area doesn't mean that they lose trust in every other area, and I think we've seen that. But certainly trust has been dented, and for me, what we need to do is we need to show that we've learned the lessons of what went wrong, and that we are moving on, because we need to move on. But we're not moving on saying, oh well, that was then. We're moving on saying, what have we learned from that experience?